So thank you very much, folks. It is 1 o'clock. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Donna. Glad everybody had a safe and happy Easter, and remind everybody you know to get the vaccination. The only way we're going to get out of this is if everybody gets their vaccination. So the proceeds of this meeting will be recorded and made available on the internet. And can we have the clerk do the roll call, please?
Mayor Clarkson, are you present?
I am.
Deputy Mayor Windover?
Present. Yeah.
Councillor Armstrong?
Present.
Councillor Franzen?
Present.
Councillor Lambshead?
Present.
For staff, we have Donna Taggart, CAO Treasurer.
Present.
Steve Brockbank, Director of Emergency Services. Steve, are you with us?
Yes, I am here, present.
Dylan Kosh, Director of Recreation and Facilities.
Present.
Ivan Coombs, Director of Public Works.
Present.
Adele Arbor, Temporary Manager of Building and Planning.
Present.
Anne Ruth, Deputy Clerk.
Present.
Allison Martin, Planning Administrator.
Present.
Chelsea Carpenter, Waste Public Works Coordinator.
Present.
And Jesse Clark, Director of Corporate Services Clerk, is present.
Thank you. Now we're going to have a moment of reflection. If anyone has to think of special people or just I think today everybody is special. Thank you. Now, we are pleased to announce that Megan Robinson has joined the team as our new accounts payable tax clerk. Megan comes to us from the city of Peterborough, where she worked as part of the finance department. Welcome, Megan. At this time, I'm going to remind council members of their obligation to declare any pecuniary interest that they may have. They can do it now or at any time during the meeting if something arises. We can have a motion to approve the agenda, please. Deputy Mayor Windover, Councillor Lambshead, all in favor? That motion is carried. Adoption of the minutes of regular council meeting of March the 16th and the special council meeting for March the 24th. Motion, please. Councillor Lambshead and Councillor Armstrong, all in favor? And that motion has carried. Minutes and reports from committees and boards. Economic Development Advisory Committee, March the 8th. Library Board, February the 19th. Parks, Recreation and Culture Advisory Committee, March the 11th. Motion, please. Councillor Franzen, Deputy Mayor Windover, all in favor? That motion is carried. Liaison reports from council boards and committees. Does anyone on council have a report that they would like to speak to? Councillor Lambshead?
Just one comment on the Parks and Recreation and Culture Advisory Committee. Their master plan is almost ready to bring to council, so hopefully that's ready for the April meeting. Looking forward to everyone having.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to that whole committee.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Now, statutory public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act. Motion to suspend the regular meeting. Deputy Mayor Windover, Councillor Armstrong, all in favor? And that motion has carried. Okay, so we've got zoning bylaw amendment file 2027 for Murphy. Is Allison here?
I am.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, this is a public meeting under Section 34 of the Planning Act to consider an amendment to the municipality zoning bylaw B 2014-070. Notice of public meeting for today's applications containing the prescribed information that was circulated to all landowners within a 120 meter radius of the subject lands at least 20 days prior to this meeting. The notice was also mailed to all prescribed agencies, public bodies, and persons in accordance with the regulations. Anyone wanting to be notified of any decision from today's public meeting must send in a request to myself or the clerk, and the notice of passing will be mailed to them, setting out the method and manner in which appeals may be made to the local planning appeal tribunal. Please note that if a person does not send a written comment prior to the passing of the bylaw or make an oral submission at a public meeting, that person may not be entitled to appeal the decision. This is a public meeting for file number 20-27 to consider a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by Greg Lawson on behalf of property owner Gary Murphy for the property located at 80 Fire Route 277. The property at 80 Fire Route 277 has a shoreline frontage of 74.6 meters, 245 feet, and a lot area of 0.73 hectares, 1.61 acres. The property is currently zoned shoreline residential private access. The lot is currently occupied by a dwelling with a floor area of approximately 67 square meters, 722 square feet, as well as 3 detached storage buildings. The applicant wishes to construct a replacement dwelling that occupies the same location, but with a ground floor area of 178.4 square meters, and boathouse storage building with a floor area of 95 square meters. In order to construct the proposed one-story replacement dwelling with a walkout basement and the boathouse, the applicant would require the following relief from the zoning bylaw. First, a reduction to the minimum water yard setback to the proposed northerly deck from 30 meters to 6.8 meters, which is a slight improvement to the existing 6.1 setback to the exterior wall of the existing dwelling. Second, an increase to the size of the proposed boathouse from 74 square meters to 94 square meters. Third, a reduction to the minimum northerly side lot line distance for a boathouse from 15 meters to 2.7 meters. Further, the applicant would need permission to recognize the gazebo currently located in the water yard. There is a planning report on the agenda from the municipality's planning consultant, Chris Jones. His report states that the application is generally consistent with the provincial policy statement and the growth plan. In the report, Chris states that he is able to promote the expansion as it does not decrease the existing shoreline setback. However, he is not able to support the construction of a new storage building, as the applicant's site plan refers to it as a boathouse. The municipality has received a comment from Curve Lake requesting an archaeological assessment. At this time, staff are not requiring that one is completed. Thank you.
Okay, have we any questions from council members? Yes,
Just one, through you, Madam Mayor. Have any neighbors written in either for or against this application?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I have not received any comments from neighbors regarding the application.
Thank you.
anyone else? Yes,
I have received some comments when I visited the site from the one neighbor asking if we kept at least 10 feet from that adjoining property line. But I think 2.7 meters is exactly, is within that.
okay. Now we have the next one for Pico. Go ahead, Allison.
Thank you. This is a public meeting for file number 21-03 to consider a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by property owners Jacqueline Fu and Stephen Pico for the property located at 9 Fire Route 85. The property at 9 Fire Route 85 has a shoreline frontage of 89 meters and a lot area of 0.27 hectares. The property is currently zoned shoreline residential private access. The lot is currently occupied by a dwelling and a detached garage. The applicant wishes to construct a one-story addition to the rear west side of the existing dwelling and a proposed screened-in room added to the south side of the existing dwelling. The total ground floor area would be increased from 68.7 square meters to 103.4 square meters. In order to construct the proposed addition and screened-in room, the applicant would require the following relief from the zoning bylaw. First, a reduction to the northerly interior side yard from 4.5 meters to 1.3 meters, and a reduction in the minimum water yard setback from 30 meters to 18.77 meters. There is a planning report on the agenda from the municipality's planning consultant, Chris Jones. His report states that the application is generally consistent with the provincial policy statement and the growth plan. The municipality has received comments from Debbie Thornhill, Mike Chapman, and Barb and Gavin Willoughby, who are all neighbors of the property. All comments received from neighbors appear to generally be in support of the application. The municipality also received a comment from Peterborough Public Health, who have no objection to the proposed addition, as well as a comment from Curve Lake requesting an archaeological assessment. At this time, staff are not requesting one. Further, to clarify, the zoning bylaw amendment before council today recognizes the existing guest cabin located in the water yard and the existing garage with the second floor and balcony that is not permitted to serve as a habitable space or have plumbing services, which is in accordance with the building permit approved for this structure. Thank you.
Okay, we've received a request from Holly Richards Conley, the applicant, to speak in favor of this application. Are you there? And if you are, please unmute your audio and share your camera and provide your comments, please.
Hi, through you, the chair. I am the agent on the file, and I am just here to answer any questions that council may have about this project.
Anybody? Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one question. Is there currently any plumbing installed in that garage with the second story?
I can't say for sure. I was not part of the process when the previous owners built the garage. There is not currently a bathroom in the garage. It is just like a games room upstairs and then a regular garage downstairs.
Thank you.
Holly, I have a question. If the township isn't requesting an archaeological review, then when does Curve Lake become the go-to?
I can't.
I'm surprised they're separate because it's the second one that the township didn't require, but Curve Lake does. So who's the
So typically on, I do these planning applications in all other municipalities. Typically when they come forward, most of the time they're a condition of a variance. So we would be requested to get one as a condition of a variance. So before submitting for building permit, we would have to get the archaeological assessment done and submit it as part of the building permit. In this case, I have not been able to speak to Allison about the recommendation that we not get one. The rules through the Ministry of Tourism Culture, there's sort of like a checklist that you have to go through. If the cottage is newer than, I think it's 1960, and or there have been previous disturbance on the property, aka when they built the garage, there would have been big machinery in there and all the land would have been disturbed anyway. That is one of the criteria that doesn't force an archaeological assessment, but I would leave Allison to answer this because I haven't had a chance to speak with her about the recommendation.
Okay. Actually, Terry, you look at quite a few of these. Have you got a comment?
I did look at this, and there is a lot of exposed bedrock, so very little chance of any archaeological things there. I'm not saying it's impossible, but there is a lot of exposed bedrock on that property.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Okay, thank you. Now we're looking for Adele. You're going to introduce the next one, the 21-04.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Mike and Ann Frankowitz are the owners of a shoreline property located at 310 Edwina Drive. They have applied for a zoning bylaw amendment to permit the construction of a 62.5 square meter or 672 square foot garage. The property is currently site-specifically zoned Environmental Protection -2. Because of the environmental sensitivity of the EP zone, the EP-2 zone only recognizes and permits existing uses. The property owners had applied previously for 2 zoning bylaw amendments, one in 2016 to permit a replacement dwelling and another in 2017 to recognize a reduced water yard setback for an attached deck. The purpose of this proposed amendment is to add an additional use, that of an accessory structure, a garage, to the EP-2 zone. The proposed garage is not within the 30-meter water yard setback. It is intended to maintain a front yard setback of 13.7 meters or 45 feet from Edwina Drive and an interior side yard setback of 1.8 meters or 6 feet. All accessory building provisions are being met. no reductions are being requested. There doesn't appear to be any negative impacts to the waterfront environment resulting from the proposed construction of an accessory building, that being the garage. And that concludes the introduction of the zoning bylaw amendment today.
Thank you, Adele. Have we got questions from council or comments? Councillor Lambshead.
Just a comment, Mr. Frankowitz was unsure as to why he needed the zoning bylaw amendment, but I don't think he knew that it was environmentally protected -2, so that is the reasoning for the zoning bylaw amendment.
So that has been communicated to him.
Okay, just did.
He just did. Okay, now we have a housekeeping amendment. Adele, would you like to speak to that one, please?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. There are 3 properties subject to this housekeeping amendment, which have had site-specific zoning amendments previously applied. However, during the comprehensive zoning bylaw consolidation in 2014, they were never brought forward with their respective approved exemptions. The housekeeping amendment is intended to only reflect the special exceptions in accordance to the previously approved bylaws. This amendment applies to 29 Salcoa Road, 1929 Lakehurst Road, and Mystic Point Road. In regards to the Salcoa property, the public meeting notice inadvertently included only one property subject to the proposed amendment. However, the former bylaw B 2006-162 was approved to facilitate a severance, which included both the severed and retained properties. Staff have received numerous calls regarding these properties and explained the intent of the housekeeping amendment. And that concludes the presentation on the housekeeping.
Thank you, Adele. Questions from council or comments? Okay, seeing none. Now I need a motion to reconvene the regular meeting. Deputy Mayor Windover, Councillor Franzen, all in favor? And that motion has carried. Now, business arising from the statutory public meeting.
Did we not need a motion for that last presentation by Adele?
I think it's coming, isn't it?
Thank you.
I think.
Yep.
So business arising from the statutory public meeting, Allison Martin, Planning Administrator, rezoning amendment bylaw. Are you there?
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, there was a report on the agenda from the external planning consultant, Chris Jones. His report is in support of the proposed replacement dwelling. However, it does not support the proposed storage building. Mr. Chris Jones is recommending council direct staff to prepare a zoning bylaw amendment to authorize the proposed replacement dwelling and to preclude the proposed storage building. Thank you.
Okay, we need a motion, please. Councillor Armstrong,
I'll make exactly that motion to receive the report and to direct staff to prepare a bylaw amendment, but precluding the additional structure.
thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Franzen, all in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, Allison, zoning for 2103.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, there was a report on the agenda from the external planning consultant, Chris Jones, and his report is in support of the planning application and is recommending that the zoning bylaw amendment be approved.
Okay, thank you. We need a motion, please. Councillor Franzen, Councillor Lambshead, all in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, Adele, file number 2104 for Frankowitz.
Through you, Madam Mayor, there is a report in support of the zoning bylaw amendment, and it's being recommended that council support the zoning bylaw amendment application 21-04, and further that council direct staff to prepare the zoning bylaw amendment for approval at the next council meeting.
Okay. Councillor Lambshead?
Yep.
Councillor Armstrong, all in favor? Motion is carried. Adele, you're on again. Just a housekeeping amendment.
Through you, Madam Mayor, there is a report in support of the housekeeping amendment, and it's being recommended that council receive this report and support the housekeeping amendment, and that council direct staff to prepare the zoning bylaw amendment for council's consideration at their next council meeting.
Motion, please. Councillor Lambshead,
To approve as recommended.
Councillor Franson, all in favor? Motion is carried. Now we have a couple of presentations. We'll now have a presentation from Natalie Baker, Business Development Manager for Ontario Clean Water Agency, AQUA, regarding the annual review of operations. Please unmute your audio and or share your camera and make your presentation. You will have 20 minutes and we will ask council for all questions to be saved until the end of the presentation. Go ahead, Natalie, if you're there. She is.
Can you see me and hear me okay today?
We can.
Excellent. Good afternoon, Your Worship, councillors and staff. For those of you who I have yet to meet or members of the public watching today, my name is Natalie Baker with the Ontario Clean Water Agency. Today marks my second virtual presentation to the Municipality of Trent Lake since the beginning of the pandemic, and it's still very strange to be presenting from my home, which is only 1 minute away from the municipal office. So once again this year, I'll state that hopefully next year we'll have the opportunity to meet again in person. So today I'll be giving a quick overview of who AQUA is as an agency with regards to our operations around the province. I will then also speak about the relationship between the Municipality of Trent Lakes and the operations of your systems. Yeah, you can just wait right there on that slide, sorry. And then we'll also discuss the expenditure requests for 2021 water budget, as well as the 2020 annual reports that were submitted back to you in March. Today, we also have Brent Martin, your Senior Operations Manager, here with us virtually, and he will be able to answer any of your difficult questions at the end of this presentation. So I'll not go into great detail about who AQUA is, as I did during my last presentation to council, but just a quick refresher, in case I wasn't all that memorable. AQUA is the largest water and wastewater operator in Canada, and we currently service more than 75% of the existing outsourced market in Ontario. Our clients are made up of municipalities, First Nations, industries, and institutions. And we have approximately 800 employees providing a full range of technical and advisory services. The scale and scope of our operations is quite expansive. We operate one of the largest membrane filtration plants in North America, the world's largest incineration complex down in South Peel, and some of the smallest communal systems in remote Ontario. For example, the First Nations operation at Moose Factory on James Bay. As mentioned, the operations and maintenance is our core business, but we also offer clients a broad array of related services such as financing, engineering, planning, training, and technical advisory services such as energy management and asset management. And we are actually very happy to assist the municipality in 2020 with part of your asset management plan for water, wastewater. Next slide, please. AQUA takes a shared services approach to operations, which allows us to find economies of scale and cost savings for our clients. This approach allows us to purchase bulk supplies and equipment province-wide, which produces savings that smaller municipalities usually wouldn't see. We use a hub and spoke model to deliver services where larger operation contracts anchor our hubs and shared resources are deployed to our smaller municipal spokes. This structure reflects our commitment to meeting the needs of our clients by facilitating the efficient sharing of management, administration, and operational systems to benefit. So some of the surrounding clients that would be involved in this shared services approach with the Municipality of Trent Lakes would be the City of Kawartha Lakes, which is a direct neighbor, the Township of Minden Hills, the Township of Ramera, as well as 8 other non-municipal clients, which include long-term living facilities as well as hospitals. Next slide, please. So since 2006, Aqua has been managing your assets through various multi-year contracts, and our current contract expires on December 31st, 2025. Aqua strives for the highest level of regulatory compliance, always aiming to receive 100% in your facilities. And in 2020, your systems received 100% inspection ratings in both Buckhorn and Alpine Village by the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks. Next slide, please. So under the current contract between Aqua and the municipality, we operate and maintain the Buckhorn and Alpine Village drinking water systems, as well as their associated distribution systems. And just some of the typical operations would include daily rounds, review of trending in residuals, distribution checks and chlorine residuals, monitoring of flows, chemicals used, and water quality, routine maintenance and major maintenance, which I'll get into a little later, as well as compliance management and regulatory reporting. We also offer 24-hour on-call services for any callbacks or emergency events that could happen after hours. Next slide, please. So Aqua's computerized maintenance management system has allowed your operations team to tag and keep an inventory of all essential equipment within each of the facilities owned by the municipality. Currently, our system has a total of 132 assets which have been tagged and entered into our Maximo system. So each piece of tagged equipment has a unique barcode and ID number, and the system actually will schedule monthly, quarterly, and annual maintenance based on owner's manuals and best practices for that piece of equipment. So this slide represents all the work orders that were generated in 2020. Out of the 387 work orders for your systems, 272 were preventative maintenance, 27 were operational, 79 were corrective, and 9 were capital projects. So although every work order is extremely important to the operations of your system, we are certainly proud of the preventative maintenance work orders that are conducted within the facilities to prolong the life of each piece of equipment. Next slide, please. So in addition to that preventative maintenance, your operations team also manages multiple capital projects on your behalf. In 2020, in Buckhorn, we performed servicing on the Connecticut filters. We installed a new sampling tap, as well as a new private service, and replaced the Singer valve. In Alpine, they replaced the treated turbidity annualizer, purchased a replacement cartridge filters, excuse me, sorry about that, and installed another new private service. Moving on to the next slide. So every year, the municipality is provided with a 5-year major maintenance and capital expenditure request list. This list requires pre-approval, and we work with staff to prioritize the projects and meet the financial needs of the municipality, as well as maintaining compliance. This slide outlines the requested capital projects for 2021, which amounts to approximately $58,500 for Alpine Village, and includes a chemical pump spare kit parts, well cleaning and inspection, clear well cleaning and inspection, water main flushing, and distribution valve repair. For Buckhorn, there is a proposed total of $39,000, which includes the installation of a flushing hydrant, well cleaning and inspection, chemical pump spare kit, water main flushing, a double door replacement on the building, and backwash tank bed repairs. For both systems, there's also allowances included for unexpected repairs and maintenance, including water main and service breaks for that current year. Next slide, please. Oh, you just go one more back, actually. There must be one missing. Okay, you can go forward one again, sorry. So in March, both annual reports provided to council under the regulation, you have already seen them, but I did want to quickly present an outline of those reports to give a better understanding of why they are created. There are 3 main reporting requirements outlined in Ontario Regulation 170, and the annual report includes details for all 3. So the 3 include Schedule 16, which is the reporting of adverse test results, such as adverse water quality incidents. Then there is section 11, which is the annual reports, which summarize the quantity of the treated water in terms of turbidity, chlorine residuals, lead, organic and inorganic parameters, and highlights any exceedances of Ontario Regulation 169. And then there's Schedule 22, which summarizes the quantity of the raw and treated water produced by the facilities. Every year, to keep it simple, Aqua combines all of these reporting requirements and includes it in one annual report that's submitted to the municipality. Next slide, please. So both Buckhorn and Alpine Village drinking water systems under Regulation 170, which we just discussed, are to receive annual inspections by the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks. The primary focus of this inspection is to confirm compliance with the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks regulations, as well as evaluating conformance with the ministry drinking water related policies and guidelines. So the ministry utilizes a comprehensive multi-barrier approach, which I've included in this slide, in the inspection of water systems, and they focus on source water, treatment, distribution, monitoring components, as well as management practices. As I previously mentioned, both facilities had no non-compliances in their last inspection report and got 100% inspection rating. Next slide, please. The reporting requirements for Schedule 22 summary reports is to present the latest quantity data, as previously mentioned, is broken down into raw water and treated water categories. For raw water, the average daily volume, and in this case is groundwater, over the year is compared with the permit to take water, which outlines the maximum water taking for each individual well. The same comparison is made for the maximum daily volumes. For treated water, the average daily volume is compared to the municipal drinking water license, also known as the rated capacity for each facility. So I won't go through this part of the report line item by line item, as we'll be here all day, but to summarize this section of the report and the included graphs, both systems are operating well within the rated capacity within the municipal drinking water license. Next slide, please. So how I just outlined the Section 11 report's annual exceedances of Ontario Regulation 169 parameters. So now we're looking at the quality of the water in both systems. Section 11 begins with the regulatory sample results, so page 7 for each report, and outlines numerous tables for microbiological testing, operational testing, inorganic parameters, lead testing, organic parameters, and any additional sampling required by the ministry. Now, once again, I won't go through each line item, as I'm sure a summary is appropriate for your uses. And for both Alpine and Buckhorn drinking water systems, there was no exceedances over the maximum acceptable concentration listed for any inorganic or organic parameters in 2020. Now, the one thing that you probably noticed when reading through these reports is the levels of sodium for both systems. So I did want to point out that there's actually no maximum acceptable concentration for sodium, but it's called an aesthetic objective. So this is actually set by the health unit. And the aesthetic objective is 200 milligrams per liter. But we are required to report any sample results over 20 milligrams per liter. So this information can be communicated to the local physicians for their use with patients on sodium restricted diets below 500 milligrams per liter. So both Alpine and Buckhorn did have slightly results over that 20 milligrams per liter. Alpine was sitting at 24.8 and Buckhorn at 40.9. So well below the aesthetic objective. Next slide, please. So that today concludes my presentation. We certainly value the partnership that we've built here with the Municipality of Trent Lakes, and we look forward to working with you in the years to come. And if you have any questions at all about the presentation, we would be happy to answer now.
Well, that was a nice presentation. We miss you at the conventions. Council questions. Go ahead, Terry.
More a comment than anything. It's nice to see preventative maintenance, because you know, we rely on them to get fresh water to everybody. So very nice to see that's happening.
Mhm.
I have a question. Where does the sodium come from? Is that the byproduct of the chlorine, or is it is it naturally found in the water?
Yes, Your Worship, sodium is naturally found in water, in well water, as well as surface water.
Councillor Armstrong?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. Natalie, first of all, thank you to your organization for managing such a complex system. It's mind-boggling to the layperson. I do have one question. You mentioned that there were 79 corrective actions or events that took place. And we saw some of them on the compliance report card that was presented in March. My question is, are there levels of severity associated with those? And at what point would you notify the municipality if something reached a concerning level of severity? Because as a layperson, all I see is here's an event, here's an event, here's an event. I don't know what that means, but more importantly, I don't know how serious it is or if there's something that we should be concerned about.
Mhm. So through Your Worship, to Councillor Armstrong, thank you for your question. The corrective actions could be a number of different things. It could be something from a service leak where we were called to site to repair that, but we put everything into that Maximo system. In terms of consultation with the municipality, our operations manager would be in direct communication with Donna or another member of staff during times of repair, or if it involved a financial purchase to fix a piece of equipment, we'd be in communication to seek approval from the municipality before doing that corrective action. If that answers your question.
I think it does, thank you. And if I can have a follow-up, I guess to Donna. So what is our process for communicating to the residents in those areas if and when we ever get some sort of a concerning report or communication from Aqua?
Right, so through you, Aqua and Natalie, you can probably speak to this better. There are processes in place that they would go, if we had to get the residents, they would go door to door and speak to the residents. So if there was a boil water advisory, that type of thing, if they would go door to door to do that. We did discuss several years ago trying to do a phone system, but that didn't work as well. So yes, that would be the process should that be required. But typically when they contact me, it's often for items that are already in the budget. But if it's above that, I recognize the importance that Aqua have told me something needs done, and we have a bit of a buffer in the budget for repairs. So it's accommodated through that typically.
Great, thank you. I feel reassured that we've got some processes around that.
Yeah, just to add on that, through Your Worship, to Councillor Armstrong and all other councillors, if there was ever a problem with the water that it could not be utilized in people's homes, and as per the regulation, our operators go door to door to make sure every individual understands that the water would need to be boiled prior to use.
Thank you.
Natalie, I was fortunate enough when I first got on council to be in Alpine Village when some service was being done, and I got a firsthand tour. So it would be maybe interesting for some of the council members who haven't had an opportunity to do that, to meet one of your service people there sometime when this pandemic is over, to actually see the checks and balances that take place in one of these units. I think you'd sleep better at night.
Good idea.
Thank you, Your Worship. We can certainly set up a tour at your convenience when we're at least out of the lockdown, and we can have an operator take you through the facilities and show you both of them, how they work and the distribution connected to them. The great idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, have we any more questions? Yes.
I have one through you, Mayor. I'd like to thank them. I live on Pirates Glen, so I live on the Alpine system. And I'd like to thank you for a dependable water system. I just have one question. We seem to have a fairly high calcium level. Is that just the normal for the water, or is that a specific problem?
If Brent is on, I think that'd be a great question for him to answer with regards to the calcium.
Hi, through you, Madam Mayor, to answer your question, Councillor Franzen. Calcium is very common in groundwater. It's often very high, especially in our area of bedrock with the limestone bedrock. It's not typically considered an issue, but it can be dealt with through home water softening systems.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, if everybody's okay there, can we have a motion to receive this report? Okay, Deputy Mayor Windover and seconded by Councillor Armstrong, all in favor, and that's carried. Thank you very much, Natalie.
Thank you.
Now we need a presentation from Richard Stiganga from Baker Tilly regarding the annual report for 2020. And you have 20 minutes, sir.
All right. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
All right. Pleasure to be here. And I think so far we're ahead of last year's presentation, so hopefully it continues to go that way as technology cut it a little short. But today I'm just going to present the comparative analysis as a result of the year-end audit of the municipality for the year ended December 31, 2020. So I will go through this presentation and highlight a few things that we feel are important. So we will begin with the independent auditor's report. Within the draft financial statements, the auditor's report is a 2-page document again. And what we presented here is just the opinion paragraph, the summary of the auditor's report that in our opinion, the consolidated financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the municipality of Trent Lakes as at December 31 and the results of its operations and its cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So that's your standard clean unqualified auditor's report. Couple of things to point out there. It does say consolidated, so it does include the operations of the library board as required under the Municipal Act, and as well too we're following Canadian public sector accounting standards, which means there are a number of differences that I'll try to point out between the PSAB standards and how you budget, but as I said, a clean unqualified report. So just to give you an idea as to what we do during the audit. We do review council minutes. We also do a fair bit of testing and sampling and analytical review and reviewing of estimates within the financial statements and your accounting records as well too. And then we look at all your various inflows and outflows of monies and processes as well, and looking at key controls. Next, just a summary of where we stand as an audit overview. Overall, the audit is complete pending council approval of the financial statements, receipt of the signed representation letter that is annually requested from your management that states to the best of their knowledge and belief they provided us with complete and accurate information and nothing as of today would impact the financial statements. When we prepared this presentation, we were awaiting the receipt of the legal letter, but we have received that since then, so that's no longer outstanding. Overall, there were no significant difficulties encountered during the audit or through our audit procedures. There were no changes to the plan, no disagreements or difficulties with management, and excellent cooperation from your staff at the municipality, which I think is reflective of the fact that in the pandemic year, we're still presenting normally in late March or early April. So that's an indication that your staff were able to keep everything moving and keeping your financial side of things up to date. And as well too, there were no uncorrected misstatements or differences, so that's always good. Everything was adjusted or that needed to be adjusted. So that's just a summary of the audit process. Now we'll just take a quick look at some of your numbers at the end of 2020. Overall, at the end of the year, your financial assets did increase year over year. So these are items that are either cash or can be turned into cash. So overall, you can see your cash balances did increase, and that was mainly due to the impact of setting some more money aside from underspending into the reserves. Your accounts receivable are up a lot from the prior year, and that's mainly due to the impacts of the Beaver Lake Road funding, awaiting getting those monies in, about $1.3 million from both the province and the federal government. And then going hand in hand with that, of course, since you spent money to reconstruct Beaver Lake Road, you also then had HST receivable for items, the HST that was paid on those payments to the contractor, so that also increased your receivable as well. So yeah, the main increase there are the impacts of the Beaver Lake Road construction. Taxes receivable, although they went up about 100,000 year over year, your percentage of the total levy outstanding is 6.6% versus 6.3% in the prior year. So you're still well within the 10% guideline of being in the low risk range. So you're still doing a very good job of maintaining your receivables. And keep in mind too that within the taxes receivable, you still do pay the county and school boards their required amounts, whether you collect them from the ratepayers or not. So it's still, the percentage of the levy still does remain very good. And then the next slide just gives a pictorial view of that. And then next we move along to your financial liability. So these are the amounts you owe to others. Overall, your accounts payable were up year over year. Majority of that relates to payment to the county for the Buckhorn accessibility walkway. That's the majority of the increase year over year. And other things within there are accruals for wages and amounts owing to the county and school boards for supplementaries and write-offs, developer deposits and things such as that. Your deferred revenue obligatory reserve funds. So these are funds both from your federal gas tax, your parkland, and your development charges. So although you've collected the monies, you haven't spent them in accordance yet. So they are deferred until you spend them in accordance with those agreements. Next, your other deferred revenue, fair increase there, and that represents money set aside from the Safe Restart that you've received, the provincial funding for the COVID response, and that money's been set aside that you can use in 2021. The next two items, both your landfill closure and your landfill post-closure liability and your employee future benefits, these are amounts that are calculated at the end of every year. Later on, you will see them as unfunded amounts. So these are the amounts that are estimated to close your landfills, and as well to the future costs of providing benefits to your retirees in your workforce. Both of these items, as I said, are unfunded, but annually you budget for them. So the funding of those items are not a concern, as you do have them within your budget annually. And then next is a graphical display of that. Next we come to your non-financial assets. So these are assets that you hold on to that you don't normally try to turn into cash. So majority of that being what you have tied up in your physical assets, land, buildings, roads, bridges, Um, and all your other, your rolling stock, your vehicles, and buildings too, including fire halls, those type of things. As well too, you have some prepaid expenses. Majority of that is your insurance premium, as it's doesn't tie into the fiscal year, and as well too, your inventories of materials and supplies. Result mainly for your sand and salt that you had some higher totals as your winter control costs. Fortunately, were not as high as the previous years or as budgeted. So therefore you had some stock left over and it's set aside there. Next comes your consolidated statement of operations. And this then presents it on a PSAB format, being your budget compared to your 2 prior years. And as you can see there in the budget column, it does show that you do have a surplus on an annual surplus, but of course, for your tax rate purposes, you do not budget for a surplus as required under the Act. So the reconciliation on the bottom just provides you the differences between the financial reporting under PSAB versus the way you have to do your tax rate budget. And as you can see, it does in the bottom come to zero. And then we do that for both both previous years as well. So what you can see there maybe is that your reserve and reserve funds, since you weren't, you're a little underspent in some areas, you were able to set more money aside. Next slide just gives you a breakdown of your accumulated surplus, being your 2 components, the surplus and the net book value of your tangible capital assets. And you're in a good position as the orange bar should always be higher than the blue bar. So that's good to see. Next slide gives you a brief view on the revenues and expenses and surplus. And you will see there the gray bar is your annual surplus, and that will vary based on whether you have any capital grants. And in 2020, of course, you had about $1.3 million in capital grants for the Beaver Lake Road. And of course, you recognize the revenue in 2020, but you don't recognize the expense until you depreciate that road. So in years where you have a lot of capital funding, you should have an annual surplus, and in years where you do not, then you should be seeing a deficit as you will have the depreciation with no revenue. Next, we come to the statement of financial activities. Your revenues overall just slightly under budget, which is nice to see. I guess for once in a long time under your property taxation, your write-offs were greater than your supplementaries, causing your property taxation to be a little lower. User charges, certain line items were lowered, both within the library since it was closed. Their user fees were down. The landfill amounts were down, whereas your building permits were up significantly, and that is consistent with other municipalities during the pandemic year. And those items are all within the user charges. Your grants were slightly higher than budgeted, with the Safe Restart in there. And as well, you will see your penalties and interest and your investment income. Since you waive 3 months of penalties and interest on your taxes, you can see the reduction there, and your investment income with lower rates. Although your bank balances were higher, the banks and the Bank of Canada rate were lower, which resulted in lower investment income for you. And then as well too, your federal gas tax, about 163,000 was utilized for the Buckhorn Walkway. And the next page just gives a pictorial review of that. And then now we can see on the next slide where you spent your money operationally. Overall, your actual expenses were lower than budget. And as I mentioned earlier, winter control was lower than budgeted, so you didn't have to invest in as much there. General government, just some savings and underspending there, as well as in the fire department under protection services. And building and planning were under budget, causing some reductions in comparison to budget. And environmental services both includes the use of the water systems and your landfill and recycling operations. Health services is medical center and the cemeteries, and the library is included in your recreational and cultural services. And planning and development, there were some economic development costs that did not materialize as budgeted, so that's why those amounts were below there. And then the following page just provides a pie chart of that, and like most municipalities, transportation services does have the larger share of the pie there. And then next slide just looks at the expenses slightly differently than we've already looked at them. And salaries and benefits are your largest expense since you provide service. Majority of your services are provided that way, so that's the largest expense there. And as well too, the amortization expense with acquiring new assets. The amortization was higher than prior year and budget. And the following slide is just also, as well, a pie chart of that. And then we come to your accumulated surplus slide. So earlier, the accumulated surplus was shown as being $40 million, and this then provides the breakdown of it. And you will see there like $25 million has been set aside or is tied up in your surplus deficit within your invested in capital assets and your unfunded liabilities. So that's 25 million of the 40 million, and then what is left over are your reserve and reserve funds. So these are the amounts that you can utilize moving forward. So as you can see there, you were able to increase some of those reserves from current year operations. So that's with your future acquisition of capital reserves going up. I think too, you have a number of capital projects upcoming that then of course it shows the benefit of having those reserves. So if you wish to do some projects, you don't have to then cause your tax rate to increase to complete a project. Ideally, then you can get your projects done and have your tax rate continue on a nice stable, predictable increase as opposed to making significant changes there. So, and then the next slide just provides the total review of that. And then the following slide shows you where you spent your $4 million in capital. Similar to the expenditure slide, the roads transportation services is the larger part there. As mentioned earlier, the Beaver Lake Road provided you some grants, but it also then was the larger portion of the orange pie there on the roads and bridges. In addition, you purchased a tandem truck and then some road works for other roads like Sumcott and Nichols and Kennedy, Alexander, things such as that, as well as working on gravel roads, land improvements. Majority of that is related to the Buckhorn Accessible Walkway. So that gives you a brief summary of the capital additions. And then you can see the following slide compares your additions to your amortization. So, it's good to see that your additions are greater than your amortization, but that will change. But it's also then good to tie both your reserves and your spending into your asset management plans to ensure that the two coincide so that they work together. And then the following slide just provides you some average useful life and based on the areas, how much is unamortized, and in the green and the red is the amortized amount, and then your net financial assets is the final slide showing the progression over the last 5 years, and that you still do remain in the black moving forwards. That's a summary of where things ended up at the end of December. Any questions?
Okay. Do we have questions from council members? I have one, Mr. Stiganga. You do a lot of these, and I would imagine the insurance premiums are commonly causing a lot of problems. Is there any kind of movement that you know of where people are getting together and trying to come up with some meaningful way of tackling this insurance problem? Like, are you involved in that?
No, Mayor Clarkson, I'm not involved in that. I'm just aware that there are significant increases, and just not in the municipal sector, but it appears to be in all sectors, even for private industries, and some places not even renewing people's insurance policies. So it seems to be an issue there. But I'm not involved in that, so no.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else questions? Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, to you, Madam Mayor. I have questions on 4 slides, Richard, if I may, and then
Okay,
just
sure.
one comment in summary. I don't know if my page numbers are the same as yours. I'm using the full agenda package.
Okay.
Okay. So in my agenda package, it's page 135.
Okay.
Sorry, Justin.
There.
And
So
What is your question?
the title is Consolidated Statement of Operations.
yes, I found that.
So I just wanted to confirm the transfer to reserves was budgeted at 521,000. We actually transferred 2.5 million. I just wanted to clarify that those are 2 things. One is underspent budget monies, and number 2, grants have been provided to us by different government levels that have been set aside, and the money's not spent in 2020. Is that correct?
Yes, it'd be a combination of those items, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Page, let's see. 136. So that would be the next slide. That's easy. So tangible capital assets.
Yeah.
The net book value is, almost 25 million. How much of that is buildings? Do you know? What percentage?
Actually, I can tell you that number.
It's important because it'll relate to a next question.
All right, yeah, because when you actually go to the draft financial statements on note 8, on tangible capital assets, I didn't go through that, but it does give you a breakdown of the net book value, and $5,450,000 of that is tied into is related to buildings.
Okay, so that's 20%.
Yeah.
Okay. Then on page 144, which is reserves, no, that's not Accumulated surplus?
Yep.
Okay. So for future acquisition of capital, we have $11 million, which is up from the prior year of a little over about $1.5 million. Again, how much of that is reserved for buildings?
So your reserve funds are detailed. And of course, some of them are, I think your treasurer might know better than I, but certain things like roads capital is just all into one's reserve for roads capital. So whether that's broken down in between buildings, I'm not aware, but that's, there are a number of other specific buildings mentioned, some halls and stuff.
So, okay, so I need to ask Donna how, later, not today, how much of that
That's- yeah.
11 million is for buildings?
So through
Yes.
you. Yeah, so they are, roads, for instance, is in one capital replacement reserve. So yeah, it would be the combination of roads, everything in there. But I do, when I enter each, when there's a surplus, I allocate that it is for buildings. But anything in that reserve could be used for capital purposes.
And could be used for buildings?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't realize there was, okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Terrific, that's great, thank you. And the last question is 4 slides on. Page 148. And it's tangible capital assets, average useful life. I was just surprised that buildings show 72% remaining life, given that we've now, we've looked at the Buckhorn Roads Depot, we've now looked at, you wouldn't know this, so this is new news about 49, but it just seems to me that we are facing higher replacement costs for buildings, and that we are close, it would be a lower number in terms of remaining life. And I see Donna has a comment on that.
So through you. So that when we changed to PSAB accounting, we had to come up with a date that the buildings were built essentially. So in some cases, we didn't know that. So we had to use a benchmark date of 1998 for some. So it shows that there is a greater useful life than there really is. And I have reported that in asset management reports that I have presented to council, because that it is misleading. I agree.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. That clears that up. If I may, just one final comment. Richard, I know you would be disappointed if I didn't point out the third time that the charts and the tables are in different order. I know you were waiting for that comment. I have one more year in my term. I'm hoping you can fix that for the next report so that they align.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, good. I think, can I just add one comment maybe on the tangible capital assets too? Keep in mind, right, they're based on historical costs, so what you paid for them. So the fact that although you might have a lot of buildings that your newer buildings, like your fire hall, of course, being a newer building, of course, as time goes on, costs go up. So that would then create a higher value, which is why compared to an old, perhaps an older building like your, I believe the Rhodes Yard on 49, I believe you acquired that from MTO, which is not as new of a building. So therefore, keep that in mind too when you look at this graph. So there's no correlation on this slide to any type of replacement cost. So that's why it's always important to look at your asset management plan.
Perfect. That helps. Thank you. Thank you
Yep.
for your indulgence, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. If there are no more questions, we're going to thank you very much for that presentation. Well done. And thank you, Donna, for making sure that it goes smoothly. I'm sure it's a combined effort by a lot of people to get there. Again, thank you for the presentation. You'll now be removed, but you can come back on and listen to the remainder if you choose. Yes.
Thank you.
The recommendation for the motion after Ms. DeGanga's presentation would be that council receive it and approve the audited 2020 financial statements as presented, and further that council authorize the mayor and CIO to execute the management report, which Mr. DeGanga has provided.
Thank you.
I will make that motion.
Okay. And we have seconder, Deputy Mayor Windover. All in favor? Carried. Now, does anybody need to have that motion read out, or is this okay? All right, thank you. Okay, delegations, we don't have any. Staff reports for Public Works. Tyler Peters, Engineer Project Director from Greenview, is going to speak to the dedicated mechanics facility. Are you there, Tyler? If you are, please unmute your mic and we're ready to hear what you've got to say.
Good afternoon, Your Worship. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Great, thank you. It's Tyler Peters reporting with staff today to Council. Part of the report to Council in your package, I believe Ms. Carpenter will be reviewing that specifically. In support of this report to Council was a existing building review that Greenview performed as an appendix to this report. It's dated March 16th, and the purpose of this report was to review the existing 5-bay 49 Depot garage building and consider it for repurposing and future use as part of the overall dedicated mechanics facility project on this site. The original approach to reviewing the building was as per Council's direction back in, I believe it was in September 2020, perhaps earlier, with respect to any opportunities for the municipality's Recreation Facilities Department to repurpose, reuse this building for its needs in terms of equipment and vehicle storage, administrative space, etc. So within the content of the report, there were some findings that were specific to general condition, and I guess there's some key points that are really of value for Council's understanding that maybe I'll just highlight instead of reviewing all components of the report. So at the top of section 3, the building, as we understand it from past reports, is that it was constructed circa 1963, and as a result is over 50 years old. It's consistent with the former Department of Highways type of building. We've seen these in other projects, other sites, other municipalities in Ontario. Kind of a cookie cutter public works type garage that was built in the 60s and early 70s. It didn't appear that major repairs or alterations have been completed on the building. So that gives a little bit of context as to what it is. In general, the building's condition is summarized in section 4 of our report. We were able to observe the majority of the key components of the building during our site visits. The primary visit was on February 25th, as noted. Within those efforts, measurements were taken with respect to repurposing or potential repurposing of the building, and we also did a building code and occupational health kind of compliance audit as part of that visit. and those findings are also summarized in the report. Section 5 identifies key occupational health and safety components that were noted. We bring those to council's perspective primarily. These are key components that should be undertaken regardless, or key components of the building's condition that were reviewed during our study, and we've noted under the further on down in the report particular elements that should be considered. I can move forward through to section 8 and section 9. This is information provided by the municipality with respect to the potential reuse of this building for recreation and facilities department use. We were well supported by municipal staff with respect to information and concepts. So that was very helpful in undertaking the study. And that information is summarized there. The primary space needs are included in section 9 of the report, including staff and office areas, washrooms, sewage disposal, i.e. the existing septic system, and related factors. Of course, a large part of the existing building as well as future building use for the Recreation and Facilities Department would be for vehicle and equipment storage and related workspace. And that's noted specifically in section 9.5 of the report. And with that, just before I move to the next section, there's an attached drawing, which I'll get to in a second, that kind of puts context to some of these spaces and the existing building. With respect to the overall site plan, when we look at the site plan associated with the building, we're working with the overall property, including the existing sand domes, as well as the proposed new dedicated mechanics facility, which understanding the size of that building and its approximate location and how to service that building, we've taken that into account with respect to the site planning elements. We have a challenge with respect to what's called limiting distance between the existing building and the existing sand domes and any potential expansion of the existing 49 depot building. So that's summarized in section 10 to give some context to some of the constraints and limitations for additions. And then we start to get into alternatives in section 11 of our report. It's kind of broken into three key parts. First is minimum renovations, and these are minimum requirements, primarily relative to occupational health and safety and or building code. And we've listed 5 key points about that we noted from our review. Exit signage, patching of the concrete floor, and repairs to structural steel, removing the urinals and adding lavatories in the existing washroom. There's only one washroom active in the building today. Adding openings or ventilation systems to meet building code requirements for primarily the garage space where vehicles are being stored, and if needed, is looking at additional heating requirements of the building, depending on how the municipality chooses to potentially use the building moving forward. Those minimum renovations, we've developed a preliminary budget based on past experience of approximately $50,000. That would be subject to further review and design of the key elements, depending on, again, if the municipality chooses to continue use of the building effectively as it is today. The second alternative the municipality could consider is under 11.2, large-scale renovations. This is effectively renovating the entire building, and you can see the points listed in this section Key aspects, of course, are complete envelope replacement. So the existing envelope, so the exterior of the building, including the roof, really isn't repairable. Certainly isn't easily repairable. So looking at those types of repairs, we noted earlier on structural repairs which have been attempted, as well as the garage floor condition and related works needs to be addressed. The heating systems are at the over their service life. Ventilation is absent in the building effectively without the opportunity of opening windows. Washroom renovations to meet existing code requirement are noted. Garage area ventilation, which again is a code requirement, and occupational health requirement would need to be addressed. And exterior walls and slope ceiling elements also need to be looked at. One of the key issues that we've observed is the water damage and splash damage on the southern side of the building in front of the doors. Interior space arrangements and changes would also need to be configured based on needs and some of the changes to meet current code. And that's an extensive large-scale renovation within the limits of the existing building area. The third alternative the municipality could consider is replacing the existing building with a new building. Certainly the building as it exists today is over its service life. As noted above in the sections above, a new building could be considered with more flexibility for future additions, and monies would be invested into a building with new structure, new and current HVAC and envelope systems, windows, doors, etc. But those costs would likely be comparable to the renovation costs noted in section 11.2 for the large scale renovations. So as I'm sure you've heard before, your worship and council, the cost of renovations are often more than building new. And that's independent of COVID conditions. That remains consistent in a number of projects of this type of nature we have completed. The new building option is something that's presented to council as a consideration. Section 12 provides our recommendations for the municipality's consideration. The first one being large-scale renovations or the replacement of the existing building could be considered effectively equivalent in cost is our expectation. Renovation or replacement of the building in the existing location would restrict the new dedicated mechanics facility building potentially based on limiting distances. This particular recommendation may not be at play as of recent developments in the dedicated mechanics facility project or task on the same site, but it's something that is relevant to the building replacement location. And the third point is if the building were to be replaced, the replacement building should be located closer to the north property line to provide more flexibility in terms of site planning and existing and or new buildings, including future sand dome buildings that the municipality may require. So those are the primary elements to our report, Your Worship, and I'm happy either to answer any questions on our report or wait till the end of staff's report.
Well, I think right now, while it's fresh in everybody's minds, is anybody comment now? Carol?
Thank you. Just a clarification. I heard that minor reservations would have a price tag of about $50,000. I might have missed it, but did you put an estimated cost for 11.2, the major renovations, and for 11.3, a new building? Just ballpark?
Through you, your worship, within staff, we did provide a preliminary estimate for minimum renovations. The large scale renovations, based on what we know, or what we also further would anticipate, would be generally equal or approximate in cost to a new building. We have provided a preliminary construction cost estimate. I believe that's been included in the staff report.
And that figure is how much? Sorry, Donna. Answer.
So through you, it's 1.3 to 1.5 million, I believe. And it isn't in the staff report. We were just looking for direction from council, which option they would like us to proceed with, and we would come back with the costing in a further report for you.
So if I can clarify, 1.3 to 1.5 is for major structural renovations as well as a new building.
Right, so through
I
you,
think that's either or.
yeah, Tyler is
Right, understand.
indicating they would be comparable in costing.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yes,
Through you, Mayor, if we were building new, would the size of the building have to be the same as the size of the present building? Or would it be larger or would it be smaller?
well, I think that's probably going to be a question coming up. I question the fact of having to have 3 heated areas for pickup trucks when we've got to heat this to a certain temperature. But I don't, like, what is the space that is required as opposed to the space that's in that building? I think that's what you're asking. Carol?
Yeah, I was going to build on Councillor Franson's question, which is, it looks like you're proposing a separate Recs and Parks building from the roads building, which would include a dedicated mechanics facility. And it may be this limiting distances thing, but obviously one building would be cheaper than 2. So my question would be, why is that not one of the options?
Through you, Mayor Clarkson. In discussions with staff and Greenview as well, space needs were taken into consideration for both Public Works as well as Recreation and Facilities departments. So I think the recommendations, and I can let Tyler speak to this more, are in line with the space needs that have come about from each department. The primary purpose of the dedicated mechanics facility is that being a dedicated mechanics facility. Therefore, it requires more garage space and storage space for tools and all of the products that they would have there. Therefore, it's anticipated that the admin area or the ancillary area would be smaller in scale to accommodate the primary use of that building. But again, I can let Tyler elaborate on that if he has anything else to add.
Before he does, may I just comment? It would seem to me that one building could have shared washrooms, shared locker rooms, shared eat-in space, shared dining space. And as soon as you try to accommodate 2 different staffs in 2 different buildings, you have to duplicate those amenities and facilities. So maybe Tyler, you can explain why you wouldn't propose one building with meeting the needs of both staffs, but allowing for shared amenities and facilities that both need.
Right, thank you, and through you, your worship. Current direction, and it's an excellent question to step back here and have a closer look at the overall project, I think, in terms of the new dedicated mechanics facility and opportunities for sharing and cost savings. Right now, the design progress with respect to the dedicated mechanics facility has identified a building that meets council's direction from the work and resolutions in the fall. And that has recently been locked in terms of overall size of building, and also providing an opportunity for future expansion of that building. With respect to the existing garage building, currently used as the 49 Depot, the size of that building generally meets the space needs of the Recreation and Facilities Department, including their administrative space as well as their vehicle and equipment storage needs. And that's illustrated in the figure attached to our report in terms of general size. And that building size is somewhat larger than I think was originally anticipated from earlier reports, i.e. the facility master plan by Cornerstone. The building's a little bit larger in terms of overall needs and inclusion of all of recreation and facilities equipment. So that being said, is there an opportunity for shared equipment and ancillary spaces like washrooms and such? There could be that opportunity within the new dedicated mechanics facility. Then we would be looking at an expanded footprint of the building, so a larger building that would extend effectively towards the east, so away from the county road, extending towards the tree line to the east of the property. We're starting to get into that position, although the site certainly seems large when you drive onto it in a regular vehicle. We're starting to get into that site planning constraint issue that we need to be careful of in terms of overall building and planning on the site overall. We also have, as a factor, the existing sand domes and their proximity to the building. The new dedicated mechanics facility is also somewhat of a constraint in terms of limiting distance. So the further we go to the east, the closer we get to the sand domes, and then measures need to be taken to address our limiting distance, so how close we are to those buildings. It's not unachievable, but it's something that's important to consider.
I'm somewhat confused. I thought when we did this review, we were pretty clear with the directions that we had, and Councillor Lamb said you comment on this, please. But I think we had pretty much decided that we would put the dedicated mechanics in there, and we would do renovation that needed to be done in the other building in order to put in the Parks and Rec. Now, they show in here 18 staff. What is the Parks and Rec staff? That sounds to me like an awful lot of people. How many people actually work for the roads department? So are we building something here that is a way, like I can see where that building could be actually cut in half, where you could put some storage in there that wouldn't have to be heated. I think we're starting to grow something much larger than what we had anticipated and what we had budgeted for. Councillor Lamb said, do you want to comment?
I think that was our original idea, is that this building would probably have some more useful life, but it seems to me that that's not the case, unfortunately. But with a small renovation, I mean, it says a limited or a little bit longer lifespan. I don't know what a little longer lifespan means. If you put $50,000 into the building, does it last 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? As a Parks and Recreation Department house, or does it last 1 year? I don't think, I mean, small renovation to let us be able to budget this for the future might be the right way to go.
Well, 1.4 million versus 50,000 is a pretty good gamble.
Well,
if you get 5 or 6 years out of it, you've done, like that's a huge ticket when we already know we've got to do the other one. Like it's going to double our costs. Yes.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, it is important how long the building would have a useful life with the minimum renovation. So we, number one, need to understand that. If it's less than 5 years, I think the most efficient and cost-effective approach would be to have one building for both staffs that meet both of their needs, but take advantage of synergies and common requirements. So if in the next 5 years, we have to build a new rec and facilities building, I would suggest it be part of an overall building structure that is on that site. And I think I heard somebody say that the requirements for the dedicated mechanics facility were locked down. Nothing is locked down in terms of a design or a building structure yet.
No.
So I think we're still in the planning stages for both of these. And we still haven't decided whether we're renovating, big renovation replacement. But I think there's a fair bit of information missing at this point in time.
Terry.
And I think we have the idea of possible expansion of the dedicated mechanics facility. So why couldn't we do the expansion now and attach the Parks and Recreation Department on the end of that building and share all those amenities, all the HVAC, office space? I mean, you have to increase the office space. Yes, sure, I agree. But I mean, I see such an opportunity for shared expenses.
What is the staff for the Parks and Rec? Don?
So through you, if you look at the report, there's an indication of 6 total staff. The 18 you're speaking of relates to the sewage disposal portion of the dedicated mechanics bay, because that building has been built for 18 persons for washroom purposes. So 18 is the number for the public works staff that would work out of or be considered working out of that building as a primary location.
Yes.
Do we know what the useful life of the building would be at this point in time if we were to invest $50,000 in minor renovations?
Approximate.
Yeah.
I would ask through you, Tyler, would you be able to speak to that?
Sure, thank you. And through you, your worship, a detailed analysis of, structural elements in other core building systems would be required to provide an accurate estimate. We are anticipating, based on some of the key challenges we did observe, we did review, that the life of the building would likely have less than 5 years of remaining life, even with the minimum renovations required. And that can be evaluated further with additional review and study if the municipality wishes to do that.
Deputy Mayor Windover, you had a question.
When did you figure this estimate up at the cost to do this work?
Through you, your worship, based on experience doing this type of work, individual elements were kind of combined together to prepare the minimum renovation estimate that's presented in the report. A more detailed review of key components, as I mentioned earlier, would need to be undertaken to provide a more detailed estimate. This is a ballpark budgetary estimate based on past experience.
Has the cost not increased so much in the last year? In other buildings, it sure has.
How do you mean?
Through you, your worship, certainly impacts of COVID on construction costs, but certainly material costs is sadly a high risk unknown with respect to construction costs. This would typically be what we would anticipate to see in current cost, and we hope that if construction were to be undertaken, be it in late 2021 or into 2022, in whatever form, the renovation or replacement, that we would start to see costs coming back to what we would normally have anticipated pre-COVID.
I think it would be interesting to know what the square footage is that the Parks and Rec need to accommodate themselves, plus maybe a 10% additional staff. And then factor that into adding on to the construction that we're already thinking of. Because if, as Cheryl and Terry say, that could be worked into where all of the basic expenses are covered and all we're doing are walls and ceilings, it might be interesting to get that cost. To start and do another brand new one at 1.4 million, I think that does not make sense for us whatsoever. We're basically doubling our expenditures here.
Through you, Mayor Clarkson, as Tyler referred to previously, the existing 49, the size of that building would suffice for the needs of the Recreation and Facilities Department. And the estimate provided, or the preliminary estimate provided by Greenview of 1.3 to 1.5 million is for an approximate 450 meters squared building and the associated site works.
Well, where did they go from operating out of a trailer and a couple of storage units to needing a 5-bay garage? I'm having trouble with this concept. Comment? Anybody?
I just wanted to make a comment about, the dedicated garage, the repair center. Wouldn't that also take care of any kind of repairs for the equipment from a rec department? I mean, I think we're a small enough municipality that we can combine services.
Well, I think that's what the discussion's all about here. But I think it has to be brought into scale. Like, as I say, if you look at Parks and Rec saying that 5 balers, what they need now, that's I don't know what they can put in there. Like realistically, what kind of space do they need? Obviously, that's got to be way oversized. Donna, no question or comment?
No, through you. Yeah, I guess I can let Tyler speak further to when he says the design of the current dedicated mechanics bay is locked down. He's done a design based on council direction previously, and I know there are some time constraints that he has to file for the ECA work that needs done. But as far as the exact requirements of the Recreation and Facilities Department, we can certainly bring a report to the next meeting and clarify that. I know Dylan is on there, but I wouldn't want to put him necessarily on the spot for that. We can bring that back, but that is probably, the lockdown is based on us trying to move forward with what council has directed to date.
But we want to do it right.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I get a motion here? A motion to receive the report. Motion to direct staff and consultants to go back and look at other options, including a shared building for roads and Parks and Rec at that location. And in bringing forward those options, include depiction of current needs and growth needs, and break those out very specifically. And I invite any counselors to add to that, change
Well,
it, whatever.
what I would add to that is I would add a diagram that on paper you could see, okay, your moors are here, here, here. So we actually know what square footage is going to be required.
Kind of did. Or the,
As I say, when you look at what they're operating, it just,
what page, Terry?
14 of the
What's that, Terry?
On page 14, they do show the existing depot with 3 plow trucks in there and the renovated sort of idea of what you would do with it for a Parks and Recreation department.
Oh, here you go, Jesse.
Like if you started to add that to the other one, you're basically almost doubling yourself. And it just can't be that much stuff to go in there.
But if I may, that's where the synergies of, you don't need separate washrooms, you don't need separate eat-in facilities, you don't need separate. So some of those would be consolidated into shared facilities if it were one. If the space permits it, I don't know a lot about construction, but I'm pretty sure that one building is a lot cheaper than 2 to both construct and maintain.
Terry.
My question is the width of our dedicated mechanics facility and the width of that building without needing any more office space, if we could increase the office space in the dedicated mechanics facility. And you put an extra bay on for all 4 of those pickup trucks to enter from the end of the building from the east. That way you still have flow for traffic behind the building to the east for all the larger trucks and these smaller trucks. And then you share you share your HVAC, you share your office space. Sure, you have to increase the septic system, probably you have to increase some office space, but I don't think it's a whole refit of the entire structure. I think we have to keep moving forward with that dedicated mechanics facility. I think this is just a burp in the road here, because I think it's easily solved.
And since when do we put all of our vehicles in heated spaces? You know, like why do pickup trucks need to be in heated spaces? Like we're not heating it, we're not putting everything else in heated spaces.
Especially when we don't even use them hardly in the winter. We just use in the summer, mostly Parks and Rec.
Anyway, I think this, I know it's probably going to increase the time frame, but I don't think we've got the answers that we want yet.
So now there's motion on the floor.
Yep.
I'll second that motion if it hasn't been seconded.
Okay, all in favor? First of all, I'm going to ask if there's any questions to that, or if everybody's want to add anything, or.
I certainly will want to add stuff, but I just don't have it in my brain right now. It's a little bit large. I'd like to have a look at the design of the dedicated mechanics facility to see if, in my own mind, we can accommodate another bay that facilitates all of this.
I would too, Terry.
So then can we put this motion on hold until, or do you want to go ahead with, because if we go ahead with this, then we're stuck with this motion.
Well, I think it's, if I may, through you, Madam Mayor, I think it's broad enough. It basically says, look at other options, including, so one of those options would be.
So then
one
that just
building.
lets us go forward. Then when the other options come back, we do it again. Okay, all in favor? Thank you, Carol. All right. Chelsea, you're next.
Through you, Mayor Clarkson, I believe that
That's
whole
part
item
of
is
it?
done.
Okay.
Yes. So we can move on.
Now, so we can use the same motion to cover that as well? Okay. Ivan, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor Clarkson, Council. Before you have a report regarding a small piece of road on Fire Route 72 that at some time the municipality has surface treated. I met with Mr. Lapointe a week ago and indicated that I would be happy to tear up that section of road and put some gravel down so that they could carry on the maintenance of it in the future. So if council's in agreement, that would be great.
Okay, everybody okay with that?
I would make that a motion as recommended.
Okay, moved by Councillor Lambshead, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. All in favor? Motion is carried. Ivan, we have, stay on there, Ivan. We've got several people who are really concerned about speeding at the Sandy Lake Beach. Can we do the same thing there that we did at the school, which is put that as a, what do they call that? Yeah, reduce, but there's a reason, there's like a safety zone,
Community safety.
community safety zone. Can that be done through there, Ivan?
That would be up to the county, Mayor Clarkson. It would just have to be a request to them. It's their road and their jurisdiction.
Okay, we shall do that. All right, so we've had our motion on that one.
Can I ask Ivan a very quick question?
Sure.
I got a call on Moonline Road, and they were wondering when the road would be swept, and there's quite a few potholes at the beginning of Moonline. So just if you're aware of that, Ivan?
The potholes, through you, Madam Mayor, are at the county intersection.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, and they would be their potholes, not my potholes.
Okay.
As far as the sweeping, the brooms are on the low now, and we're just waiting to get started.
Okay.
So it should be, it'll be a couple of weeks
It'll be a couple weeks.
before we get down to that. Yep,
Report that back to her, Ivan. Thank you very much.
you're
Quite a few-
welcome.
The county fixed quite a few of those potholes up there a few days ago.
They were still there this morning.
Well, then they missed those because they were filming when I went by there. Okay, fire and emergency, Steve Brockbank, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you, Mayor Clarkson. Council, before you have my report regarding the, I promised to bring a report back with the closing of the fire college. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, do we have questions? And if not, can we have a motion? Yes.
I have a question. Yeah, in the start of it says regarding the modernization of the Ontario Fire College. I don't look at it as modernization. I look at it as cost savings. I think it's just an excuse to say they're modernizing the services by cutting that service from the provincial government. So I'd like modernization to be taken out of this document.
Steve, do you want to comment?
The wording, through you, Madam Mayor, the wording is in there from the government and that was their choice of terminology. We can definitely remove that if that's at the request of council. I don't have a problem with that. There will be a little bit more news coming forward in our next council meeting with regards to this as well, but I can't speak about that at the time due to requests of the government, but and it does refer to the modernization. And what they're doing is they're giving some equipment away from the fire college to our regional training centers and trying to make the changeover easier. And they refer to it as modernization just because of the technological advancements and such for online training and that type of thing.
Seems to me they gave us a lot of roads a few years ago.
Steve, I just want to make a comment that I wasn't criticizing you. It's more of a criticizing of the provincial government because they always use this kind of wording when they're cutting services.
Yes.
Through you, yes, through you, Madam Mayor, I totally understand, Councillor Franzen. I do not disagree with your comments.
Councillor Armstrong?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick question, Steve. Do you anticipate any adverse impacts on your organization as a result of this?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I do not with our municipality because of our geographics. It took us as long to get to Gravenhurst as it does to Norwood. Norwood just seems to be a little bit more adaptable because we use our own people for scheduling and training. Since it become a regional training center, it is the exact same curriculum and sign-off processes and testing now, government and FPA standard.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
I think the new system is going to be kind of onerous on some of your staff because I think there's some very a lot more online stuff, so we have to keep track of. I think it's going to be important for your management to stay on that.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I do agree. It is an asset having a full-time training officer now as well, so that, and we've adapted from the COVID situations to a lot of online learning ourselves to keep forward motion, so to speak, in our training. So it becomes a little easier the more you do it. But I do agree.
Okay, can we have a motion then, as far as this, we finished the conversation? Yes.
Yeah, I'll make.
Okay, and seconded by Deputy Mayor Windover. All in favor? Carried. Allison Martin, Building and Planning. Are you there, Allison?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. On today's agenda, there are two municipal appraisal forms for consent files B-4-21 and B-5-21 by Tom DeBoer on behalf of the owner, Ted Mabey. The subject land is located along County Road 26. The application conforms to the official plan policies as the proposed use is residential and the current land use designation for all parcels is residential. Both the retained and two severed parcels conform to the zoning bylaw provisions, and a rezoning is not required for either lot. The retained lot is proposed to be used as residential, meaning that the use of the hunt camp will no longer exist. As per the proposed use, the retained lot will conform with the provisions of the zoning bylaw. Staff have reviewed the application and recommend that council supports it, subject to the conditions of $1,000 cash in lieu of parkland fees to be paid to the municipality and a mutual entrance that is being recommended and supported. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have a motion if there are no questions? Okay, Councillor Lambshead, and seconded by Deputy Mayor Windover. All in favor? That motion is carried. Finance, Donna. Water budgets.
Yes, through you. So further to the presentation by Aqua, we are now looking to set the water rates for 2021. So the recommendation is to have a Buckhorn Lake Estates water rate of $1,325, which is an increase of $25, and to keep the Alpine Pirates Glen water rate the same as in 2020. As Natalie referred to, there was an asset management plan review undertaken by Aqua in 2020, and under that plan, they recommended that the current reserve levels were sufficient and current rates were as well, and really just to look at the performance of the assets in determining the rate. So because Buckhorn Lake Estates did have a deficit last year of $7,546.14, I am recommending a slight increase for that water system. But once again, leaving Alpine Pirates Glen at the same level as 2020.
All right, can we have a motion, please? Councillor Lambshead.
Make a motion as recommended.
Okay, seconder. Deputy Mayor Windover, all in favor? That is carried. Donna, clarification of insurance clarification for library.
Okay, thank you, and through you. So as council are aware, the municipality signed a memorandum of understanding with the library in 2017. And that document just outlined the services and support the municipality provides to the library board. So there has been a recommendation through our insurer that we amend that agreement, and that is coming later on the agenda. There is an amending bylaw for that. So all it does is clarify the process that we currently use for insurance for the library operations, and that involves the municipality covering the library under our insurance policy and billing an annual amount to the library budget for that. So this just clarifies that, and we have looked at we have given the wording to our insurer, and that is part of the amending bylaw.
Okay, motion please. Deputy Mayor Windover, Councillor Armstrong.
Second
comment.
Question.
Sure.
I assume that you have reviewed that with the CEO of the library as well.
Yes, so through you, yes, that is where they actually had that motion passed by the board in order to make sure that came through the proper channels.
Okay,
Thank you. Second.
okay, all in favor? Motion has carried. Jesse, Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you. Through you, with the approval of the 2021 council calendar, council directed that that staff revisit the 1 p.m. time for both the July and August meetings in April. So this report is bringing that matter forward again for consideration. Staff are recommending that council continue with the 1 p.m. time for both July and August meetings due to the staff commitment that's required, and as well the live streaming and recording of council meetings. Staff feel that this is sufficient to make sure that the council meetings are open and transparent, and public participation in the decision-making process is encouraged year-round and not just during the summer months.
Do we have comments? Yes.
We're still in COVID, and it looks like somewhat we're still going to be affected by COVID by July and August. So I think it would be premature to be looking at evening meetings at this time.
Anyone else comment? Yes, Carol?
I was just going to make a motion to receive and support the staff recommendation for all of those reasons.
Yeah, I'll second that motion.
Okay, any more comments? Yes,
I'm okay with that for this year.
as long as we're not setting a precedent to go forward.
Right.
Yeah, okay. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Correspondence for information. We're going to deal with all of these unless somebody wants to pull one out. I think we should pull out 11.6. Yes,
We've supported that
I
two
know.
times in the past, so I'm okay with making a motion to receive them all for information purposes.
I would second that.
Yeah.
Okay. Comment? If not, all in favor? Carried. All right. Correspondence for action. Municipality of Grey Islands Minister's zoning order. Motion to receive or support. Don't everybody speak at once.
Make a motion to receive for information.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lamsad. Deputy Mayor Window versus seconder, all in favor. Motion is carried. Town of Kingsville, Bill C-21. Councillor Armstrong,
Motion to receive.
seconder. Councillor Lamsad, all in favor. Motion is carried. Town of Orangeville, Bill 257. Motion, please.
Motion to receive.
Thank you, Councillor Franson. Seconder, Councillor Armstrong, all in favor. Motion is carried. Township of South Glengarry Provincial Vaccine Rollout. Motion to support, possibly. Councillor Armstrong,
I was going to make a motion to receive.
do we have a seconder?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Councillor Franson, all in favor? Carried. Bylaws, Jesse, you're going to speak to this?
Yes, thank you. There were two bylaws on today's agenda that didn't have a public meeting or associated staff report. The first is B 2021-47, which is a zoning bylaw amendment for file 2023. The approval of the zoning bylaw amendment was deferred pending delivery of the new reference plan, and the public meeting was held on February 2nd. And B 2021-48 is the annual bylaw appointing the County of Peterborough weed inspectors for Trent Lakes for 2021.
Okay, thank you. And we don't need a motion for that. Okay, now we need a zoning bylaw amendment for file for Fu Pico. Motion, please. Councillor Franzen, Councillor Lambshead, all in favor. Motion is carried. Amendment for Carly. Motion, please. I'm Councillor Armstrong, Deputy Mayor Windover, all in favor. Motion is carried. A motion for the appointment of weed inspectors for 2021. Councillor Lambshead, Councillor Franzen, all in favor. Motion is carried. Amend Library Memorandum of Understanding. That's B21049. Councillor Lambshead, Councillor Franzen, all in favor. Carried. Business arising out of a previous meeting. Now, I don't know if this is the right place to bring this, but I'm going to anyway. We had a request in to have Rhonda Keenan attend a meeting, and also seeing how about the vacant lots that were going to come, that we could get a look at seeing what's there. I think we spoke about getting a list of those that we could maybe determine if there was something that we wanted to do something with. And the playground that is being looked into, there is a substantial grant that we're waiting that is going to cover most of that if we can get this done in time to get the grant. So I think, what is that intake? Is it May 4th?
So through you, I don't believe we have the date in May, but Dylan has been working on that. So we plan to apply for that grant.
Perfect.
And as well, the surplus property report, we are working on that. We're mapping them all so we can provide that to council. But
okay,
we have been working on that initiative.
Okay, and Rhonda Keenan to be invited to, yes.
Through you, Rhonda Keenan has been invited, and I believe she's confirmed for either the next meeting or the first one in May, but I can send an email to confirm.
Perfect. Well done. Has anybody else any business from a previous meeting that you're interested in? Okay, have we any notices of motion? Yes.
I do have one, Madam Mayor.
All right.
I apologize in advance. It's a little lengthy, but I wanted to provide some context. So I'll read it. Were you also going to protect? Okay. Oh, there it is. Thank you. Okay, so lots of whereases. Whereas there are inconsiderate people who thoughtlessly toss garbage, litter, and rubbish onto our roadsides. And whereas roadside litter pickup is not a regular service provided by either the municipality or the county. And whereas roadside litter is a blight on the natural landscape and is detrimental to the environment as well as to wildlife. And whereas many of our residents are conscientious and committed to organizing cleanups. And whereas the municipality and the county are not able to endorse a community cleanup event under the current COVID-19 restrictions. And whereas several community associations are in the process of planning a roadside cleanup event for April 24th or 25th. Therefore, council directs staff to accept recycling and waste from these events on the dates of April 24th and 25th without penalizing the participants by marking their bag tags or charging a fee. So this will come up at our next meeting for discussion and motion.
And what has to be done there, having been part of that organization for a long, long time, is the garbage has to go to the dump sorted. Okay. Now, information items, liaison report from external boards. I think, Terry, you gave yours. And anybody else been anywhere that they want to talk about?
Forgot.
Yes.
Just that there was a online meeting from Kawartha Land Trust dealing with the Butley Caves, and there were about 40 people online, and there seemed to be quite a bit of interest. And there was some report that was written that there has already been damage to those caves from the trucking from logging. So it's something that's worthwhile preserving. I don't know if anybody's going to be leading the fight on it, but the property is for sale right now.
What township is Butley?
Judy.
Oh, Dewey.
It's right beside the.
Sorry,
quarry.
I thought you said Butte. Yeah, okay. Gotcha.
Yep. And the caves are about 1.6 kilometers long. They're the fourth or fifth largest caves in the area. So it's a pretty significant ecological feature.
Now, can you walk in those or do you have to crawl?
No, it's not really meant for amateurs. It's a very narrow opening and you could get lost in the caves. And there are bats down there.
I can see Donna wants to go there.
I've been in them.
Have you?
Not a good promotional
Did you have-
presentation.
Did you have to crawl to get into it? And then once you get in, does it open up? No?
What?
You're pretty much crawling all the time. There's some higher spots.
Yeah, the pictures look nice.
So what'd you do, drag a rope with you so you could find
You
yourself
crawl
back
for
out?
1.7 kilometers?
No, I didn't go through them.
Oh, okay. Okay, in your shorts.
Did you find anything interesting in them?
No comment.
Besides the bats?
God, bad.
Well, maybe what should, until somebody knows what they're going to do it, maybe they should be fenced. Fence off the entrance. Until somebody takes ownership of them.
And Mr. Ritchie is the new owner of that property.
So he owns the caves?
He owns the caves.
Well, maybe he could be, maybe you could approach him to see if he would like to fence that.
Oh, I'm sure I get a long ways.
Donna, would you have a suggestion there?
Through you, I know the chair of the recreation or the Parks, Recreation and Culture was going to bring it forward to that
Yeah,
group.
he was going to make it, bring it forward to our next meeting.
Yes, but I don't.
Okay, other than bats, is there any other information items? Okay, now we need to go into a closed meeting to discuss personnel matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, labor relations, or employee negotiations. Anyone that is listening or viewing the electronic meeting may remain on the line for when council rises from closed session. We need a motion to go into close, please. Councillor Lambshead and Councillor Armstrong, all in favor? Yes, we're going to recess for a moment. We're going to rise from the closed meeting and we need a motion, please. Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Lambshead, all in favor? And that motion is carried. Business arising from the closed meeting, adoption of the minutes from March the 16th. Motion. Councillor Franzen, Deputy Mayor Windover, all in favor? Motion is carried. All motions coming out of closed meeting, we don't have any.
Yes, we do.
Oh, we do?
Library.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm
I can't.
sorry, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Through you, the recommendation was to appoint Lance Coulthard for the remainder of the 2018,
Yeah, that makes
2022 council term for the
Yes.
library board.
Okay, and that's
Yeah.
motion by Deputy Mayor Windover. Councillor Armstrong did the seconder. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, motion for the confirming bylaw. Okay, Councillor Lambshead, Deputy Mayor Windover, all in favor? Carried. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Franzen,
Oh, terrible.
Councillor Armstrong, Councillor Lambshead, Councillor Franzen, Deputy Mayor Windover, and that motion has carried. Donna, would you like to place a motion?
Sure. I'll go home too.
Thank you, folks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.